It's the Poojie Podcast, proudly sponsored by Cimarron Golf Club. What is going on, Pooj crew? Thank you for being here for episode 94 of the Poojie Podcast. Great episode lined up ahead of you today. A lot of good topics coming up, a lot going on in the world of sports. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to this channel, follow us, help support us, and help this thing grow. Show us to your friends. If you like our takes, comment. If you hate our takes, comment as well. We love listening to what you guys have to say. Show us to your friends and family, whatever you got to do. We're just trying to grow this thing. And follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you may find us for sports betting picks, fun polls that we do throughout the week and weekend. And shout out to Cimarron Golf Club right there off of County Road 210 for all they do to help support the podcast. Episode 94 is here after a big episode 93, which saw us cover 5 or 6 different topics. Here we're covering not as many, but still a great episode. I'm going to welcome the guys in right now. Let's kick this thing off with the elephant that's been in the NFL offseason room for the last few months, with Julio Jones finally being traded away from the Atlanta Falcons, finding his way to a Jacksonville Jaguar division rival, the Tennessee Titans. How do we feel about this, fellas?
Horrible.
Oh my gosh, what just happened? I mean, my initial reaction is shouldn't even say my initial reaction. It'd been a reaction for a while when we knew he was gonna be available. I'm like, maybe this Jag should go for him. And so many Jaguar fans are like, oh well, we don't need receiver, we got plenty of receivers, or like he's old. I'm like, this is Julio Jones, and he's potentially going for a first round pick. We had a second first round pick. He didn't even go for a first-round pick. So yeah. I feel like the Jags could have done this, and now he's going to be playing against us.
Luke, why didn't the Jags go get Julio Jones?
Bro, I don't know. It's this front office, man.
I know.
It's like we could. I don't know if we're making trades though. We're just going after free agency, and
it might be too early to think of like getting a superstar like Julio, but what better welcome gift for Trevor Lawrence than Julio Jones to lead this team with? And oftentimes guys in their second year are popping off. Having Julio Jones next year too would have been great for Trevor, I'm sure.
Yeah, it would have been a nice toy for him, and not even a toy. It's like a freaking like Mercedes or something like that. It's would have been great for Trevor Lawrence's rookie year, and obviously all the way through the rest of Julio Jones's career. It would have been great for Trevor Lawrence to be able to develop with that. But I think we've heard Urban Meyer say it in the past, like Jacob, you just said, this team isn't in a position, to spend big or take on a hefty contract for a superstar. We saw it in free agency. That's why we didn't make any mega big splashes. The one big splash we did make was Shaquille Griffin, who is still in the younger side of his career. And yeah, go Knights. And Marvin Jones, who is kind of more of a veteran pickup for a very young receiver room. Hopefully we see DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault, and Marvin Jones kind of produce some output that makes us not even think about Julio Jones. But from a defensive side of the ball, we play the Titans twice a year. They've had our number for like the last decade, it seems. Now they have Derrick Henry and they have Julio Jones. What's the dynamic of this offense? What is the identity of this offense? Because I've been thinking all day, like for the longest time, you play the Titans, they're going to run the ball 75% of the time, and that's how they're going to beat you. How does Julio Jones fit into this team?
Matchup nightmare, basically across the board now. Because before it was like, okay, they have Derrick Henry, make sure we stop the run. A.J. Brown might have a few pitches here and there. And now it's like, man, what do? You have too many weapons that are on the field that you have to contain. And if you're containing the deep threat with Julio, then that makes more room for Derrick Henry to just bowl you over for 99 yards again.
Yeah, I absolutely don't think that the Titans are going to change their scheme drastically. They've been doing it for years like this, and they have the absolute best workhorse to do it in Derrick Henry. So now it just makes it where after Derrick Henry just bruises your defense for just these chunks of yards, and then they set up the play action, you're not worried about play action just to A.J. Brown. You're worried about it to A.J. Brown or Julio Jones. So it's just going to be a very similar offense, in my opinion. But now when they do pass, they now have Julio Jones, which is going to be like very tough to defend.
Yeah. I mean, as a Jaguar fan, this makes the Shaquille Griffin signing even more important. This is one of those post, moves looking back kind of thoughts is, okay, the Shaquille Griffin signing becomes that much more meaningful to us as Jaguar fans because could you imagine going into the season with this happening? We don't sign Shaquille Griffin in free agency, and we have CJ Henderson as a sophomore coming off maybe not the best year of a cornerback. And who would be the other guy, right? We have Sidney Jones. There's Trey Herndon. None of those guys really strike fear into the mind of an offensive coordinator as far as matchups go. So I think this Shaquille Griffin signing almost becomes even more powerful for the Jaguars following this move. Now, from a quarterback standpoint, you go from Matt Ryan to Ryan Tannehill, and Matt Ryan, he has always gotten more publicity, more love than Ryan Tannehill for majority of their career. But is this a quarterback upgrade for Julio Jones going to Ryan Tannehill? Is this a situation where Julio Jones is excited to be playing with a guy like Ryan Tannehill as opposed to Matt Ryan?
Man, I honestly don't know if it's like an upgrade per se. It's a youth upgrade. I don't want to say Ryan Tannehill is overall just better than Matt Ryan. I don't think neither of them are bad. But with this offense being so run centric, it's tough to say that Matt Ryan was throwing the ball so often in Atlanta. I think he was very good at it. I don't know, Luke. Would you say Ryan Tannehill is better than Matt Ryan? Maybe at this stage of his career?
I wouldn't say that. Ryan Tannehill and Matt Ryan, I think, have a similar skill set. Matt Ryan has shown that he has an MVP caliber type of season, but Ryan Tannehill hasn't had that really. But also, he hasn't had too many chances to succeed. In Miami, he wasn't doing too great. But now he does have a team with some offense. So I think Ryan Tannehill is like one of those average quarterbacks that plays above average almost consistently, which is good, which is what makes the Titans a winning football team because ever since he's been there, they've been doing solid. So I think it's just basically almost the same, but now you just have a monster of a run game and a team that can win their division easily.
Yeah, and look at Atlanta, okay? So Atlanta goes from up 28-3 in a Super Bowl about 5 or 6 years ago against the Patriots. They fall in that game in overtime after some crazy plays, a Julian Edelman catch that extended a drive, a crazy, I think it was James White touchdown at the very end of the game to win it, like one of those overtime situations where Atlanta didn't even see the ball. And pretty much since then, this team has spiraled drastically downward. They have not seen a deep playoff run really since then. They've lost a lot of talent, both at the running back position. We saw Devonta Freeman leave. Todd Gurley came over for a cup of coffee. And, they have Calvin Ridley. But is Matt Ryan the long-term future right now? Or are the Falcons in full reset mode with a rookie coach and a rookie GM? And now they are just stuck with a veteran quarterback. This feels a lot like when we had Blake Bortles, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the next move? We kind of know what direction we want to head elsewhere, but what is the next move for the Falcons after trading Julio Jones? Are they full on reset mode, or what's the outlook for them this season or the next few seasons?
I mean, it's not even like they got some crazy pieces in return to be in full reset mode. Like they didn't get, like imagine if the Jags did make this trade, which I argued that at the time of the draft would have been a good time, like because we had a second first round pick, so that would have been good for the Falcons to potentially receive. They got the second round pick from the Tennessee Titans, who will likely have a low second round pick. So the capital they got in return isn't even crazy in terms of turning anything around. Like the Jaguars' second round pick would have arguably been, a much better pick, let alone their first round pick. So it's tough to say they need to be in full reset mode when they don't really have the pieces for trading such a great player to get back into return to be able to do that.
Yeah.
As I will say, any fantasy owners of Julio Jones know that you'll usually see him on some kind of injury report, though, and make you double guess and say, should I start him? Should I not start him? And I don't know if that's just simply because he was on the Falcons and he's like, well, this season's a wash now, and I don't want to get more hurt, a la Jalen Ramsey back spasms, or if it was just if he was really hurt and just needed to take some more time. But I don't think he's played a complete season in at least a few years. He's had to miss at least some time.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously everyone talked about the cap hit that the Falcons were going to take. And it's, one of those things where it's somewhat of a win-win because the Falcons do shed that cap space. And if they are only going to win 7 games in a season, why would you have Julio Jones on the roster anyway? If I'm a Falcons fan, I'm just more upset that the team didn't figure it out elsewhere with this roster or with this coaching staff. They had Dan Quinn for a while, who obviously couldn't get it done in big games. He couldn't figure out a way to be consistent with winning. And you had enough weapons offensively. I mean, this is an offense we talked about being a top 5 offensive juggernaut for quite some time with Matt Ryan, Devonta Freeman, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones. And now you add Kyle Pitts to that. And as a Falcons fan, you just have to feel like Kyle Pitts, wrong place, wrong time. Yeah, you got a great tight end, but where was he 2 or 3 seasons ago that could have maybe put this team over the top as being a perennial Super Bowl contender? Did the Falcons maybe feel more motivated to trade Julio Jones now that they had Kyle Pitts? Do you think that was in the cards anywhere from a Falcons standpoint?
I mean, I think so. Like, you get Calvin Ridley a few years ago, and Calvin Ridley has arguably had better statistics than Julio. I don't think he's the better receiver by any means, but he's shown that, as long as he has someone around him, which could be Kyle Pitts, he can produce. So adding Kyle Pitts to have a complement to Kyle Ridley might work a similarly in production than Julio and Calvin, except you're just getting younger. And then maybe getting something out of Julio in, years where you're not going to compete for real. The Kyle Pitts thing probably had to do with, Julio eventually leaving. And
Luke, wins wise, how many more wins does this add to the Tennessee Titans this season? What does this mean for their outlook as far as the AFC South, as far as the AFC Conference? What's the outlook for the Titans?
So the outlook for the Titans, I think they are almost a clear favorite for the division now. The Colts were kind of in that mix. You don't know what Carson Wentz is going to get them over there, but their defense is solid. The Colts defense is easily top 5 in my opinion, but the offense is not so much. But now the Titans are just solid all around. Amazing offense now with both a running game and a passing game. I just want to see how they implement it, but I do think they're going to win the AFC South. They will probably get at least 2 more wins with Julio Jones, just spreading out the offense so much. It's going to be a nightmare for us for 2 games.
Jacob, what about you, man?
Well, you know what? I just want to say this, though, and I'm glad you kind of referred to it as a nightmare for 2 games. The silver lining of all this as a Jags fan is that at least I think he has 2 years remaining on his contract. I'm not sure if that includes this year. Does it?
I'm not sure either. I haven't looked into the details too often.
Regardless, let's say he's there for 2 years as of this year and the next year, or even 3. The Jags with Trevor Lawrence are still expected, to be growing this season and potentially even next season. So at least now is a great time. If Julio Jones is going to be on the Titans playing us, yes, we got Trevor Lawrence and we expect to be good. But, maybe in a couple years, once Trevor's really rolling, this team overall is growing, that ship will have sailed with Julio and we will be on to greater things. I think he definitely adds at least, a couple games to their win total. They won 11 or did they win 10 games last year? And so
I think they were 11-5.
If we're not expecting to be that this year, it's at least as a Jags fan, have this happen now and not while we're trying to win the division.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect way to put it. You think of being a Colts fan, they might feel some type of way about it. They go from clear favorites to, okay, now we got some competition. Now we'll be battling late in December for that spot in the AFC South. That's a really good way to put it. As a Jags fan, we're going to be building up to that type of level in the time that Julio Jones is a Titan. Hopefully by the time we get to that 9 or 10 win standard, Julio Jones is falling off, moving on, whatever it is. But Luke, you said it right. 2-win, growth. I'd say going from 11 or 12 games to 13 or 14 wins for the Titans is a pretty reasonable expectation, considering they play the Texans twice and the Jags twice. You can almost, on one hand, count how many wins that'll be for them. 4 wins between those two teams.
Think about this too. Like, what do you have more faith in? Do you have more faith in Carson Wentz returning to form, or Julio Jones performing for the Titans? So it's like, as a Colts fan, you talk about it, like you're already kind of like, okay, we have a great team minus the quarterback. We got Carson Wentz. What are you going to put your money on? Carson Wentz returning back to his MVP form, or Julio Jones just balling out on everybody? And I kind of feel like Julio Jones is going to be the more likely thing.
Yeah. And plus, hey, he looks good in that Titans uniform. I'm not going to lie. I saw some pictures. He looks strong. I know we say this a lot about numbers and uniforms, like we can't picture players in certain uniforms. He played for like 10 years in a team in red. He looks good for having to switch over to white and blue. Not to mention Alabama, he was in red for a while too. So yeah. He looks like he fits there. And I like the way the uniform looks. Carson Wentz, we'll have to talk about that another day because I feel like we can go on. But thank you for watching this part of this episode. To continue watching this episode, please go find the next parts on the YouTube channel, as they may have already been released. If they have not already been released, they will be released shortly. Thanks again, and hope you enjoyed.